that, and that should be good. Okay, beautiful. All right, Stuart, super excited to be here doing this live with you. And if this works, we should be broadcasting on various channels. I do see that we are live and we are online on both your Periscope and our Gatehouse pages. So that's amazing. And I'm going to make sure the chat is on so that if anybody wants to send us messages, they can do that. So I'm super excited to be here, Stuart. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This is new for us, the Gatehouse. Woohoo!
Oh, it's really awesome. This and talk about taking a step up and bringing us out. I always talk about connection. And to me, as much as I hate electronics sometimes, this is a great example of how we can connect to people all over the world, right? And that's what I like about it. And I got to look at the camera here. Actually, let me just repoint this a little bit better here because I'm not exactly used to being on camera. I'm looking at the monitor and I should be really looking at the camera. So I still think I may have to do some adjusting. So if you see me looking off at something, it's not because I'm not paying attention. It's just because I'm just trying to figure this stuff out. So we're talking about self-care.
Yes,
And
we are.
before we jump into this, maybe, Maria, can you talk a little bit about what's going on in the Gatehouse, which is very important because obviously we're still in the COVID-19 lockdown. I think this is very important. And then we'll jump onto the self-care thing, which is also just as important. But people need to understand that services are not like they used to be. And not that they're not there, it's just that we got to follow protocol. And unfortunately, we're in a hot spot. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that before we proceed with our show today.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Stuart. Really appreciate that. Yeah, it's been quite an adjustment, a transition for us. For 22 years, we had been an in-person service, in-person peer-to-peer support groups and individual support for adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. And the Gatehouse is also a safe place where children can come and tell their story to the police, where Children's Aid or Catholic Children's Aid can also have visitation or visits with families to support them in their reconnection journey. So like I said, it's been an adjustment. We did have to cancel some of our services. For example, our in-person one-day partner support workshop, it has been delayed until next year due to COVID. And a lot of the spaces that we use in the community also are not available as well. So we've transitioned most of our programs now to online. So we use Zoom meetings, Google Meet, and sometimes our actual phones will use WhatsApp as well to communicate with people, especially like our students. We have a WhatsApp group that we keep in contact. So yeah, all our peer-to-peer group meetings are being delivered on Zoom at this time.
That's totally awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And actually, there's one other important little thing that's coming up, and I think we need to mention this as well. We have our 10th annual conference coming up, our Transforming Triumph into conference. I didn't even say that right, but
Transforming trauma into triumph.
yes, thank you. Which is coming up in November, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that. Thank you.
For sure, Stuart. Yeah, it's again our first ever online conference. So we're going to be running a series of webinars that are free, and we'll have different mental health practitioners, someone in the addictions field. Sherry Jackson's going to be on. We have Nicola Coles, who's going to be doing some live stream yoga with us. Brad Hutchinson, who's going to be doing some Bodwidgeon meditation, talking about self-care and mindfulness as well, and quite a few other guest speakers. The full lineup is going to be released on our website next week, so keep an eye on thegatehouse.org for that. And social media channels, we're going to be live streaming the way we are doing this episode today to our various social channels. So if you're not able to log on to the webinar platform on Zoom, you can still see the conference panel, and we're going to have a whole panel of which you were a member of, Stuart, where survivors are going to be sharing their story of healing and connection, and how the Gatehouse helped them to reconnect with others and share their story and live a better life, essentially.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And I'm quite honored too, because this will be the 10th conference for myself as well. So moving forward, it's been a big part of my personal growth, just being able to speak in front of people, which, it's funny, it's funny speaking in front of people. I never really had too much of a problem with it. It was just what was hidden under all that. Now I can't keep quiet about it, but obviously in a positive way. But it's nice to have a venue like this where I can go and actually talk about my experience. And not like there's many conferences go on like this all over the world, but ours is certainly unique, that's for sure, in what it has to offer in helping other survivors and clinicians. So it's quite awesome to be part of that. And again, I'm quite honored to be part of that. So today we're talking about self-care. And as I started in program, actually, I didn't start off in the video, I started off doing it on the audio, on the blog talk part, but self-care is really hard. It's always been really, really hard for me. I'm a really, the way I was brought up, and, what I mean by that is very old school. And I was taught just to work to the bone, right? And never mind the emotional stuff. That's another story we're going to talk about now. It's emotional stuff that's attached to that. But you work and you work and you work. And what about your time? Yes, I'm talking about my old school values and stuff. All of that, and then I incorporated my mental health issues on top of that, such as my childhood experience, or my childhood sexual abuse from my past, incorporated into my adult life, made things even more difficult. And adding that self-care element was always a really hard thing to do. I mean, for years and years, like for example, I would hide in my work as my self-care. To me, I was happy doing that. Oh, sure, I was making money and helping me with all my habits, good and bad, but nevertheless, that was my lifestyle. Well, things have changed over the years, and one of those things that have changed over the years is my own personal self-care. I talk about it being really, really hard to switch over from where I was, not just from my childhood sexual abuse, but from my old values as well. So how do I incorporate them together and still draw a happy medium? Because I like to work. I'm not really much of a couch potato, whether it's summer or winter. I always like to do things. I'll shove the driveway 3 times, whether it needs it or not, just because I can't sit there anymore. Those are just some examples of what you could be struggling with in order to bring you to self-care. Well, I'm going to give you a real short, simple thing, what I did for myself. To start myself off in my self-care, I realized, well, not realizing that I needed self-care, was that I used to carry like a stone in my pocket. And yes, there's some other attachment to that. Yes, there's grounding, and then there's pausing and being mindful of what I'm thinking and feeling. There's all kinds of elements involved in that. But the point being is I had a stone in my pocket. So whenever I felt I didn't deserve something, I would use that as part of my element to remind myself, okay, I don't have to say anything to anybody. I can keep it to myself. It's another secret element of my so-called healing and recovery. I would use this stone and, okay, Stu, I remember now, okay, I got to stop now. Take 5 minutes, step back, and I don't have to have this done today. I can finish it off tomorrow. Meanwhile, I'm struggling. I got back issues and all those kind of things. And here I'm fussing to get it done just because I think it has to be. It really doesn't have to be. So, folks, those are some things that you can think about. Maybe you have some other ways of dealing with it other than that I've done. Any thoughts, Maria, to what I'm saying?
For sure, Stuart. And yeah, having a grounding item on you is definitely helpful, especially when you're feeling a little triggered or uneasy about something. It can help you refocus your energy to the present moment, which is quite helpful in reducing the amount of anxiety that a person might feel. Yeah, definitely, Stuart. I wanted to talk about something that's kind of definitely related to that, a strategy that I recently heard about, and I wanted to share with everyone here. We're going to be using some of this in our self-care groups. And you know how we have a first aid kit for our physical injuries, right? Like we go and get a Band-Aid right away. So I learned about this thing called an emotional first aid kit, and I was like, this makes total sense, where you would have different things in your first aid kit. So you actually build a box or a bag or something that you can have on you with you at all times, where you have items that are meaningful to you, that also help with redirecting your senses, right? So if you have something that you can taste, like some gum in there, or candy, or licorice even, if people like that, or little Twizzlers, you have something that you can look at that's pleasing, like a picture of a butterfly, for example. They bring a lot of people joy, or birds, or whatever, a photo of your kids. You have something that you can listen to. So if you have your favorite bit of music on your favorite, whatever the streaming service is on your phone, that you play some songs that help you relax or redirect. So something that you can smell as well to help redirect if obviously if people are allergic to smells or have a high sensitivity to smells, don't incorporate too much smell into that. But something that is pleasing, a lot of people like lavender, for example. So it's just an interesting concept to have an emotional first aid kit with you at all times, especially given that we have trauma history, right? If something comes up, we can quickly go to that emotional first aid kit and pick something out to help us redirect our focus to the present. So it was really interesting. We're going to be incorporating that activity into our self-care group. That's coming up actually October 22nd. We had an amazing response to that group. 20 people signed up for it, and we're going 10 people at a time into the group because there's a lot of self-reflection and processing involved.
And something like that, again, like the process as we have at the Gatehouse, you need to do an intake in order to be partake of that. Now, one question, did you need to have done a group in order to do this, or can anybody just off the street come in and do this, by the way?
Yeah, for the self-care, at least an intake must be conducted. So
Okay.
intakes right now are taking place over the phone or via Zoom meetings as well, and people can just write to Stephanie at thegatehouse.org to schedule an intake, and she will guide them through the rest of the process. They'll get connected with one of our intake assistants, and it's usually one of our placement students or one of our volunteer facilitators, like yourself. The other day, you conducted an intake online with one of our students as well, so thank you for doing that, Stuart. A lot of peer facilitators out there that really want to give back to the community. We're very fortunate as an organization to have a lot of support from volunteers to help us deliver these programs. Right now, I was doing a count the other day, and we have conducted over 30 groups online alone since March.
Wow.
I was like, yes. Last year we had overall 37 groups delivered in person, but we're over the 30 mark already as of August, at the end of August. So that was we're
So
getting
we
more people
potentially could
coming forward.
double what we normally
Yeah,
would do.
yeah, double or triple even. With online, really, we just need a camera and a smartphone, right, to connect to the meeting via Zoom meeting. So downloading the app and using your smartphone as well. So and it's free. Like there's no cost for the actual group itself. There is a cost for the workbook that is sent out, and it's $20, and that cost helps to cover some of the operational costs of the Gatehouse. We're not able to
Who knew?
offer fundraising this year either. So our fundraiser this year because of COVID. So we are asking people if they could please become monthly donors, and $20 a month goes a long way to help people find their voice.
And we're connecting with a lot of people and helping a lot of people out. I mean, just the fact that we're able to do this, like if we're able to double or triple the amount of people, that's quite phenomenal. Like it's wow, it's a wow factor as far as getting up to people, because typically doing it in person like we normally do, we're getting off track here a little bit, but still part of our self-care. But we are, you know, we've tripled what we're able to do. So we're able to help so many people more by not doing it in person. It's the way it's working out, and which is phenomenal because we have a lot of great tools, and it's nice to be able to share it this way to a far greater vast of people, not just in our home, but around the world.
For sure, Stuart. And the thing about self-care, right? Like a lot of people think self-care is going to the gym, and that's one aspect of it.
Yeah.
That's the physical aspect, right? But self-care involves spiritual, involves physical, mental, psychological, professional, emotional. So all those areas for self-care. So think about even your own self-care plan. What does that look like for you? What are you doing for self-care is a common question that we ask not only at checkout as part of our group process, but in our self-care group, it's all focused on that very aspect of those different elements of ourselves that are often neglected. Like if physical is being neglected, then there's a likelihood that the emotional is going to be impacted by that, right? So if we're not taking care of our physical needs, if we're not eating properly, then the emotional is going to suffer. Maybe the psychological is going to suffer too, because our thoughts are going to be maybe distorted or disordered, kind of thing. So it's important to talk about self-care with your peers, and finding a network of people that you trust is important to do that. And that's exactly what the Gatehouse provides, right? That safe space for people to come together and find connection and heal from childhood sexual abuse trauma.
Thank you for saying so. Those of you who are joining me now too, just in case you didn't hear, I have Maria Barcelos with me. And I'm probably, again, I keep saying you pronounce your last name wrong. I've only known you all these years and I still say it wrong.
It's okay. It's
Maria is
Barcelos.
the executive director at Gatehouse. Those who are just joining us on Block Talk Radio and all the other platforms, which I'll eventually get straight to which they are and where they're going to. But folks, if those who are just joining us, Maria is my co-host today and helping me in all these buttons and controls.
If they could only see the background, right? How many screens or how many windows we have
Oh my
open
gosh, yeah, I got
to
three
be able to
monitors
stream.
going here, two microphones. I have my friggin' phone here in front of me. Oh my gosh.
That's so cool, Stuart. You know, the important thing is that the message is important, and the medium, like we're trying to achieve, we're doing the best we can right now. Given the whole world is on a pause, technically, right? We're all on pause, and our lives have been so impacted by this pandemic that self-care is such a pertinent thing to talk about and think about, and actually plan out. Like I one of the things that might be helpful for some folks listening out there is to actually plan out what your self-care activities for the week are going to be. Because if there's that intentionality, if there's that thought process given to, or attention given to what your self-care plan is going to be, there's a more likelihood that you're going to actually engage in it, and procrastination won't be a factor or too much of a factor. Although our community does talk a lot about procrastination and putting things off. I wanted to shift the focus on that note to feeling worthy of self-care, because that is a theme that comes up. Stuart, can you share a little bit more what that looks like for you, and then I'll talk a little bit about what I've
Worthy.
experienced. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'll do that. Yeah, worthy, being worthy of self-care. It's kind of like in my opening statement about in regards to even applying it to myself. But worthy, part of my being worthy from my childhood sexual abuse, being worthy was really not a factor really much in any part of my life. I had to figure that out a long time ago. I mean, yes, I was a child and I had no control over that, but with that belief holding me back, which did for a long, long time, I don't believe that now, but that was my belief. So therefore, in that belief, my worthiness of myself and others, mainly towards myself, regarding self-care or anything, is just gone. So finding that I guess you can call that flower, or that flower of feeling worthy for myself was a very hard task. But yes, applying that to any degree that you're able to find it and grasp a hold of it, I would encourage you to try to do so. Worthiness is not an easy thing to acquire, especially if you have no self-esteem, don't believe in yourself. All these things I had to figure out for myself, that yes, I am worthy, and I am worthy of all these extra things, such as taking care of myself, whether it's going for a coffee or going for a walk, or if I don't want to work, I don't work, right? Something that simple.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you there, Stuart. And one of the things about like self-worth, or the thought of not being worthy, or the feelings of guilt even that come up for people when it comes to self-care, especially survivors of childhood sexual abuse suffer with a lot of shame and guilt. They experience that for a very long time in their lives, often decades. We talk about at the Gatehouse. The shifting of that thought process from unworthy to feeling of contentment, or feeling of being worthy of self-care, is massive. Starting to engage in self-care helps with self-worth. They are related to one another. If we think that we're not worthy, or we don't deserve self-care, we're less likely to engage in it, and more likely to attend to others' needs. We talk a lot about codependence at the Gatehouse, right? Attend to others' needs. They're more important somehow in the belief of I'm not worthy operates that way. That I'm not worthy of it, so I'm going to take care of other people. They're more important than I am. I'm going to put myself on the back burner and take care of everyone else, which is something that I did for a long time too. Don't get me wrong, I'm coming at it from a place of experience as well. And shifting that belief took a long time to be able to actually practice self-care for myself. And then going back to school was believe it or not, was part of my self-care plan. It was
Mhm.
like I wanted to do this. I wanted to finish university and learn a whole new profession, and the Gatehouse inspired that for me. Because before I was in a business side, HR kind of field, and switching to counseling, social work, peer support, grassroots charitable work was a whole other element for me. So yeah, self care is definitely part of my life now. More on the physical side because, again, like I mentioned before, we have our spiritual needs, physical needs, emotional needs, psychological needs, professional needs, and some of those are off balance for me at times, and physical is definitely one of them. So I've started doing a daily workout routine. I had to put it on hold a couple of weeks back because I injured my foot
Mhm.
while
Better.
doing one of those. So that we have to also be careful. This is what I learned from me. Be careful with our limitations and not overdoing it because I have the other mentality of it's all or nothing, which is not a helpful way of thinking. But it's definitely something that self care can help mitigate those unhelpful thinking patterns too. So, yeah, thanks for asking, Stuart.
Yeah, it's even to this day, and I guess the pandemic really didn't help much. I know I'm lucky. I have a big backyard, but to me, we talk about, well, some people will look at it and say, well, that's just work. Well, yeah, I guess it is, but either I do it or I pay someone else to do it, or I just leave it. Well, I choose not to do either. To me, cleaning my backyard is self care. If I'm out there for a day or half a day, I'm quite happy, chopping leaves and cutting branches, and I don't think nothing of it. And yeah, I may get a blister. I may even cut myself, you know. But that's not what it's about. It's what makes you feel happy. And I love the way you're saying that. It's you got to find something that makes you happy, that makes you feel good. You know, my example may not be your example, but it's something that works for me. Is my point, as it does for what Maria does for her. Um,
Exactly.
So finding your glitch is super, super important. Now, I know in the beginning we were talking before we started doing this today, right? You got a chart. Maybe I wonder if you should show that chart now
Yeah, I'm gonna just
and
put it
talk a
up
little
on
bit
the
about
screen
that.
for sure. It's the self-care wheel, and it was developed by a person named Olga Phoenix. I'm hoping that I do this correctly. So let me know, Stuart, if you see the chart
Oh, I
or
see it
the
perfectly.
self-care
See it
wheel.
perfect.
Perfect. So we use this tool in our self-care group just to give some more ideas for the different realms or the different aspects of our lives that might be helpful. So if you looked at physical, like having safe housing is a priority. Obviously, our physical needs must be met. Eating healthy, exercising, getting enough sleep. Psychological, like self-reflection, going to therapy, and we would fit into this attending a peer support group. And it's right there, attending a support group. And this is exactly what the Gatehouse helps with psychological needs of people that often have not had the support, had people acknowledge their voice, acknowledge their story, and validate them, have been often shut down as a result of sharing with others about childhood sexual abuse experiences, and people just don't know how to react, or they say things like that are very unhelpful, like why didn't you tell me a long time ago, why didn't you come forward, why are you coming forward now, which is another one that we often hear as well.
Hmm.
So I've posted this self-care wheel on our social pages, so definitely take a look and get some ideas for yourself. Go into nature, like that fits in with your spiritual needs, Stuart, like according to this lovely tool. I know you're a big nature person, and I love seeing, I'm just going to stop sharing now, I love seeing your posts when you go for walks and when you film near like bodies of water.
Your body's watered down.
Yeah, I love it. It makes me feel calm, and I love your posts about coffee in the morning. Uh, I'm a coffee holic. I'm a
Wow.
coffee addict. I love
I know.
coffee.
But
So
yeah, thank you.
this is neat.
But like those places that I post about and talk about are just little simple things of self care. Like, I mean, like living, if you're downtown Toronto on the Lakeshore, for example, where the Gatehouse is, it's quite nice to, like, you don't have to spend big money. You could just go for a nice walk down by the water. And that's what I would post. Here, take 2 minutes for yourself, and it's all it takes. And you're away from people. Granted, things are a little weird this year, but and the norm is it's not usually like that. So hopefully by next year it'll be all right. But for the most part, I can take a walk down down in Long Branch, down the lakeshore, and down on the water, and not really have to worry about anybody. I'm all by myself because everybody's masked and off and doing their own thing. But it's beautiful down there by the water, and that's what I love about up north. I go to Algonquin Park too as well. So some of my pictures are about that, and then other places as well. So anything to distract the brain of not doing the so-called norm. So we
Exactly.
talked about boundaries and guilt and shame, and let's talk a little bit about those aspects of it that kind of hold us back. Um, do you want to add anything to that before I ramble on?
For sure, Stuart. Even like recognizing what is shame. What's the shame that you have about your self care, right? If you're feeling unworthy of going for a walk or unworthy of signing up for a gym membership, although we can't do gym memberships now in Toronto because we're back in stage 2.5.
Mm,
But we're getting up earlier to do some yoga, or getting to that coffee date with someone new or friends. It's interesting, like to see how shame underpins or operates or influences all these different areas of survivors' lives and people's lives as well, like people in general. But looking at that, how much shame is tied to your not engaging in self care? Where our thoughts of you should be doing this or you shouldn't be doing this are tied to your self care plan, right? Because should is another way or an operative word of shame.
sure is, and I also mentioned about boundaries as well. I mean, when we talk about personal boundaries, and the reason why I say boundaries is because I mean when we talk about for example now, what if your boss asked you to work all weekend and you did that straight for 5 weeks? I mean, how would you feel? I mean, obviously, you're going to be pretty tired and wore out. Or what happens if you know, you, I don't know, well, it's a point of overcommitting yourself is what I'm trying to say. This
Right,
is, you overcommit yourself, and then where do you take the time to apply that to yourself? The
right.
self-care I'm talking about element of it. So how are you going to apply those boundaries? When does the person start to understand, not feel guilty about saying no, or shameful because I said no and now I'm not going to do what they think or what I believe they expect of me or not expect of me. So how am I supposed to feel about that stuff? Right?
Exactly. Yeah, and looking at like how often do you say yes to everything or to most things, right? Like how many times do you say no? Do you ever say no? Looking at how you um, engage or not engage in self care is definitely important. But when it comes to boundaries, like how much are you doing for others, and how much are you neglecting yourself? These are questions that only an individual can explore and go, okay, you know what, I'm neglecting myself 50% this week. And then what are you going to do to change that behavior so that you're not neglecting yourself 50% moving forward? And sometimes there are things like emergencies that come up, obviously out of our control, that we might neglect ourselves. Like, let's say if somebody was hospitalized in our family and we're worried about them, and our self care plan is on the back burner for a couple of days, and then we'll get back into it. That's a whole other story. We're talking about ongoing self neglect, right? So it starts with that conversation, I think, of looking at what are you doing for self-care and what are you not doing that you could be doing, and what are some of the thoughts that are stopping you, what are some of the beliefs that are stopping you from doing your self-care. And if you're feeling overly guilty about doing self-care, sometimes people that are survivors too are also caregivers for other people, right? So there's responsibility comes into that discussion or dynamic, and sometimes they may feel like overburdened or over responsible for others. So even looking at how that is playing into your self care or stopping you from doing your self care, I think would be helpful in those situations.
So creating a self-care plan is kind of what you're talking about, right?
Exactly, Stuart. And I think the most, and it's again, even that is self care for the self, like stopping and thinking about, whoa, where did the week go and what did I do for myself this week? Did I do anything for myself that was helpful for me? because I'm worthy of it. And changing like how the person thinks about themselves is very important, because that, like, if we don't change our beliefs, if we don't explore our beliefs that contribute to how we behave or how we feel, then we are not mindfully living our lives. We are operating from that place of maybe autopilot at that point. And it's okay, like, again, to have empathy for yourself as well. If that's what you've been doing, it doesn't make you a bad person. It is what it is. It is what you're doing, and it can change, and you have the power and you have the ability and the capacity to change that for yourself.
So when creating a plan, how could we go about making a plan
So
that
it doesn't have
produces
to be,
sustainable?
yeah, it doesn't have to be anything like, oh, extensive. You don't have to. There's so many worksheets too on Google that you can quickly Google self care lists, self care ideas. The self care wheel that I showed earlier, and I'll put it back up real quick, was developed by Olga Phoenix, and they have, like I said, a bunch of ideas on here. And Stuart, if you could just give me a thumbs up, let me know it's sharing properly on the
Yeah,
screen.
I can see it
Great.
perfectly. Thank
So
you.
some of
Thumbs
these
up.
ideas, like, to see what you've been doing, and maybe that get some new ideas for what you could be doing for self care for yourself. And again, like working out, for example, on the physical side, you don't need a gym membership to work out. Going for a walk like you do, Stuart, in the woods sometimes is such a great idea. Going down by the, walking down by the lake, being in nature, going outside. Like, it's such a beautiful day outside today, and I hope people can get some sunshine into their day. Get your vitamin D is another one. But even looking at here, affirmations for on the emotional side, like people use affirmations. Some people don't like them, they don't identify with them, and that's totally fine. Go on to another idea. Tell yourself you're gorgeous, and then there's another one in here that could be a topic in itself: practice forgiveness. And these are not prescriptive. You don't have to do any of them if you don't want to. It really is up to you. But if you're finding yourself overextended, or feeling overextended, feeling like exhausted, emotionally drained, then maybe it's time to look at what you're doing for self-care and what you're not doing that you could be doing.
Mm. And it falls back to that guilt thing. Really, you know, I always say, well, I had to learn that I'm worthy. So, maybe finding another venue to help you feel worthy is also a way of doing so too. Just by talking to people like myself, that you're on social media, maybe you'll get some healthy encouragement from others that have gone through this process. I know it's not that easy, but and it's not feeling you're worthy. It's not that easy just because I'm telling you that that's the way it happens. Well, obviously it doesn't happen that way, but if you reach out, and you will soon discover, as I reached out, that you are worthy and you deserve this sort of self-care for yourself is really what I'm trying to say. Um, it's one beautiful thing about social media is now, and the internet, the World Wide Web, is that you can find these resources, not just from the Gatehouse, as for example, but there's, Maria didn't mention many, but the one we're showing you on the video screen here, of the different ways of looking at self-care. It's just one aspect of what you could, or rather, just one example of what you could find through the internet. And Maria mentioned there's all kinds in there, so just don't be shy. Like, you really deserve it. So just type up my self-care. Just think about me and what can I do to make me feel better. And you may need to try all kinds of different things. I kind of talked about that in the beginning, but I had to try many different things. And obviously, a lot of self-care does not require money. You don't need money to do self-care. For some people, maybe yes, but I know I learned that money does not always buy self-care. It may get you happy for a few moments, but it soon lasts forever. But I don't go for a long walk. Well, I mean, if you have to, maybe you have a walking problem. So maybe you find something else that makes you happy. Maybe you doing something as simple as getting into art, for example, or like drawing or painting, reading, music, riding your bicycle. There's so many different things you can do to take care of yourself, to distract yourself from you, but not really you, right? And you is looking after you, even if it brings up your heart rate, a few paces doing so, but in the end, you're looking after you and you're going to feel better for doing so. And again, the school, I like the example Maria talked about going back to school and getting her degrees. That's so important. I mean, it's personal growth and And if Maria fails, it's Maria. It's not anybody else. It's what she chose to do. It's what made Maria happy, and that's what matters. Like it would for anybody else.
Exactly, Stuart. And some people, like myself, I'll speak from my own experience on this one, but it's not an uncommon thing to be experience fear or be afraid of trying something new, right? Of going back and like I going back to school in my mid 30s or late 30s, I believe. Yeah, mid 30s, was a scary experience. Like a lot of self doubt, a lot of fear did come up, but it's also it was a very rewarding experience, and had I not done it, I know I would have regretted it for the rest of my life. So I'm super proud of myself for doing that. I'm proud of anyone that does do that to learn something new. Like we're doing something today that's totally new for us, learning this new skill of being on live broadcasts on different social channels. Is there anxiety and stress? For sure, but we ground ourselves knowing that you and I have capacity, and the person watching this has capacity to try something new that's different. If we don't do different things and we're repeating the same behaviors, we're going to get the same results every time. So trying something different really is something that helps us to change our thinking, change our feelings, and change our behaviors. And this is like all cognitive behavioral therapy tenets, but it really does speak to how we can shift our focus away from whatever norms it is that we've created for ourselves, and how we can move forward beyond trauma. And that's the whole thing about the conference, right? Like transforming trauma is transforming our lives, transforming the way that we think, feel, and behave, and what we believe about ourselves, whether those beliefs were put upon us by family, by social channels, by being a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, being a survivor of war and trauma, being a survivor of fill in the blank, whatever trauma you want to that you come from or discuss. Yeah, like looking at self-care and how it can help transform what we do, what we think, what we feel, and how we behave.
Absolutely. And that's the beautiful thing about self-discovery is figuring those things out after you realize that you're worthy of those things you just talked about. And I love the way you said that. Thank you. Today has been kind of like a big test as we've been kind of talking about with the other platforms that we're on here. Obviously, we're doing video and doing audio through Blog Talk. One of the things we didn't do, and I know the show's not gonna be a long show. We're doing self-care. I don't know how much, if you had any interaction whatsoever from your end.
We've had some people watch live. I haven't had any questions yet pop
Yeah,
up on the
that's all right. That's all right though. I need to create a hashtag so I can use it in the feed that I normally use, which would be the Twitter feed, which I haven't done. So I need to pick a hashtag, and in order to interact with, let's use the platform that I'm on. So I need to pick a hashtag to do that, which I can also use on the other ones as well. But I haven't done that. I just thought I would just give this a little go and see how it goes. Obviously, we haven't really had much interaction, which is all right because I want this stuff to work properly before I start trying to do all these things in the first place. So I think moving forward, when I do this next week, I will have a hashtag picked out and I'll promote it. And also, I will make sure that on my Blog Talk page, that I'll make sure that I have all the postings of all the links going to what we're doing here today, which I don't have. I will put it in after the fact. Thank God I can go in and edit it after the fact. So today, we've talked a lot about self-care in our own way, obviously, and what we do. Not practicing for ourselves, but also what we do at the Gatehouse. I'm not going to make this a long, drawn-out conversation today. I'm going to try to finish this off within the next 10, 15 minutes, because I know Maria's got things to do, and as I do as well myself. But this has really been a beautiful experience. I would like to obviously talk to a few more people, but that's all right, because I'm too busy just trying to understand what's going on here right now. And I think I'm getting a hold of it just from even when we started, we had to play with all the buttons because we couldn't hear one another, and it's just because I had that shut off or I have that muted, and I have all these things here in front of me. It was like, well, what damn thing do I push first? Turn on.
I think we're doing great, Stuart. We're doing great.
But nevertheless, I think we kind of pulled it off, and we talked about self-care. I know exactly what I wanted to do, and And to me, this is self-care too, because I love doing this connection thing. And I'm really honored that I have Maria here with me today. And we're probably going to have some more time doing this, but I know in the future you have a commitments on Thursday, so you won't be here for a while.
Yeah, I'm
Coming up.
actually facilitating the self care group with Sabra and Andrea, who is I call her the yoga genie, or she says it's yogini, and I say, you're a yoga guru. So we're going to be doing that. It's a 5 week group, and it starts on October 22nd. It's totally free. That one has no charges as well. And again, it's open to survivors of childhood sexual abuse who want to explore their own self-care plan, and all they have to do is an intake through the Gatehouse and contacting Stephanie at thegatehouse.org to set up an intake.
Maybe you can talk about the conference one more time as well.
For sure, Stuart. We have 6 panels, I believe, planned for the conference. We're going to finalize our schedule next week. One panel for sure is going to be a mental health and addictions panel, where we're going to have different counselors, therapists, peer support from different agencies talking about the services they offer, and also some of the strategies that are used in their services and how they help survivors of childhood sexual abuse. We have a panel on survivor stories. We have a panel on trauma-informed language and what does that look like. We have a Gatehouse panel that's going to be talking about our services as well. And there's going to be different activities throughout the days. So it's not a one-day conference like we usually host it, because it's online. We're going to be hosting a series of panels over the week of November 22nd to November 27th. And that is National Victims and Survivors of Crime Week. The event is sponsored by the Department of Justice, and we're super grateful to them for their support.
Well, that's awesome. I can't wait to start posting that once you get it sorted out. That's gonna be awesome. And also with our lockdown, we're gonna be like this for the next 28 days again. So there's no really as clear picture as regards to when we are going to be able to all start congregating back at the house. I'm optimistic, hoping that we can actually get together and not have to worry about masks and all these funny things, hopefully by spring, as an optimistic thought for the future, but which I'm hoping that'll be the case. So in future shows, like I say, Maria's not going to be here the next little while, but we'll have her coming back, and with some other interesting topics. And I know you mentioned Sabra, and actually I'd like to get Sabra on again, and maybe we can, once we get all these other little bells and whistles sorted out, we can have quite an interactive conversation on any particular topic which we'll be talking about. There's many things to talk about. What I like about the media interaction here is now obviously you can see me, and you can see how I'm expressing myself to whatever degree that I may be doing so, whether it be frustration or just pure what, but nevertheless, I am here to full value, as they say. So we have lots of great programs coming up to finish off the year of 2020. Great thing about social media is what we've been talking about is I can link easily with other guests, which I'm going to be asking for as well. I also would like to bring on other survivors and talk about their stories and healing journey, which I'm going to do as well. And being this is a video, obviously not everybody is going to want to do video. Well, that's, right, I can do the video, they can come on, and there's be the voice part, which will be on Blog Talk anyway. That part element will always be there. If you don't want to show your face, you don't have to show your face. I'm quite happy doing that, but that's me we're talking about, not you. So we have a lot of things coming up, especially now where we're really stretched out and around the world through this media platform, most media platforms. So I'm really looking forward to the days ahead, and who knows, right? Who knows? On a positive thought.
Beautiful.
So I think what we're going to do is I think we're going to call it off. I don't know. Again, last thing, there's no remarks or questions we have to worry about.
No, I don't see any on here. But if people want to share, feel free to share the video wherever you're seeing it today. You just never know who's in your network that is a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, trauma, or any other form of abuse, and really needs to work on their self-care. And really needs to hear these messages. So yeah, thanks everyone for whoever's watching and sharing the video. It's quite helpful. If there are comments later on, we do respond to comments. It might take us a little bit of time, but we will respond to your comments as best we can. And
just so you know, I will have Nicola, our Living with Abuse from Twitter, if you know her, anyway, Nicola Yoga, anyway, she'll be my co-hosting with me next Thursday, if not before. But primarily, that's my goal, is to be back here by the following Thursday. It'll be my regular time at 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And oh yeah, somebody wants to come and say hello. Speaking of co-host, here we go.
Hi. Hey, Nicola.
I just got back from a hike. Talking about self-care, I was aware that I had not been doing my normal hiking like I normally do, so I was out off self-caring myself.
Beautiful.
And now I'm gonna have a coffee.
Oh, she said the magic word.
All right, nice to see you, and see you again soon. Take care.
Too. Okay.
In fact, I'm even going to be doing tomato sauce today. The last of my tomatoes I picked out of my garden, because we got frost coming very soon. So I have almost another bushel of tomatoes I'm going to be saucing today. So that's, again, talking about self-care, not only for self-care, but for my stomach.
Yeah, no, gardening is such a self-care practice for people. It's a spiritual practice in itself, like taking care of another living organism, right? Like growing your own food. It's such a cool experience. And I know you and I have friendly competition on Twitter, sharing our garden photos, which is really cool.
I still have roses that are growing as well, which is
Me
really
too.
awesome. I'm ready. I got some red ones, yellow ones, and even some peach ones. They're still growing. I can't believe it.
Well, and your sunflowers, Stuart, that I love the sunflowers. So again, like nature, right? And it brings so much joy. And our message of today is for people to really take a look at their self-care plan and what they're doing, what's helpful, what's not helpful, and what you can do that's different, that might be beneficial for your healing journey.
Absolutely. And today I want to thank you, Maria, for being my co-host and helping me with all this cajargo. I'll probably have to speak with you a little bit more about it later on. But I know you've got to go and you still have a busy day ahead of you. And I really don't want to keep you here. But so we'll leave it off on a good note. People out there are listening, not only on Blog Talk Radio, but all the other platforms, Facebook. And again, Facebook, I can't even say it all. I have to write it down so I remember it. But on all the other platforms that we're on. So I don't have it correct today, but I will have it correct the next time. So folks, I'm going to bid you adieu, a great day. Please take some time for yourself. Thank you for joining us, not only by Blog Talk Radio and audio, but through the video links, whatever you may be following on. Please pass this message on that you are more than worthy. You deserve it. Take care of yourself. And if you don't believe us, come and visit us. We'll help you understand that you are worthy. And you'll see that from our side that you are worthy. But thank you all. And any last thoughts, Maria? Or
no, just thank you, Stuart. Yeah, you said everything that I was thinking, especially about self-worth. Thank you, Stuart.
And I guess we'll leave it at that. And folks, have a lovely day. Maria, if you actually, you know what? I know you got to go do some things, but sometime today, can you give me a shout back?